What's up, nerds? Tony here to talk about one of Marvel's most iconic villains and one of my personal favorite characters. But first, don't forget we're giving away this Baron Zemo Funko Pop at the conclusion of this season of The Falcon and the Winter Soldier. All you have to do to be entered to win is like, subscribe, comment, and follow us on social media at WeThemNerds on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Now, on to the question of the day. Who is Dr. Doom? In the grand scheme of Marvel Comics, that is a huge question with a plethora of answers. Let's get through the basic bio first, and then we will get into his significance in the overall Marvel Universe, and finally, talk about how he might be introduced into the MCU. Victor Von Doom, PhD, see, he's an actual doctor, is the monarch and supreme leader of the small European kingdom of Latveria. He started off with far more humble beginnings, however. Born in a Romani camp, his mother, who was a sorceress, died after a bargain with supervillain Mephisto went wrong. See, there's Mephisto. Anyway, Victor's father, a medicine man and leader of their tribe, cared for him and his people very well. One fateful day, the Baron of Latveria's wife grew incurably ill from cancer, and he called upon Victor's father, Werner, to heal her. When Werner couldn't, the Baron branded him a murderer, and Victor's father stole away in the night with his young son to hide out in the mountains. Unfortunately, Victor's father died of exposure while hiding out, but not before sacrificing his well-being to ensure his son would survive. Victor's loss set him on a path of revenge against the Baron. Upon returning to his people, Victor discovered his mother's occult instruments and began learning her sorceress ways. Victor was brilliant and brave, and he combined his sorcery with a knack for technology to keep the Baron and his men away from his people and to keep his people safe. His achievements and notoriety drew the attention of Empire State University in New York City, and they invited Victor to go study there. Believing he'd have better access to the tools needed to complete his revenge against the Baron, Victor Von Doom left his friends, his lover, and his people and set off to America. It was here that Victor would have the most fateful experience of his life, meeting Reed Richards. Victor began trying to construct a machine to speak with the dead so he could communicate with his mother. Reed tried to warn him that the machine had a flaw that could be disastrous. Victor ignored Richards, and his machine exploded, severely damaging his face. It was later revealed that Ben Grimm, aka Reed Richards' best friend and future member of the Fantastic Four as The Thing, tampered with the machine to teach Von Doom a lesson for having such an attitude of superiority. There's a lot of content in the comics where Ben Grimm blames himself for Victor Von Doom's descent into madness and villainy. After the accident, Von Doom was expelled from the university and wandered the world as a drifter and outcast. He was eventually rescued by a clan of monks. He forged himself a suit of armor, but in his hubris placed the mask on his face before it had fully cooled, bonding it to his flesh permanently. Well, as permanently as anything can be in the comics. Doom would become a revenge machine, first turning his attention to the barony of Latveria that he felt was responsible for the death of his father and the mistreatment of his people. He rechristened himself Dr. Doom and led a revolution in Latveria, conquering it and installing himself as ruler. Once he had established his base of operations, he turned his attention to the Fantastic Four, who had undergone their whole origin story at this point. Being hell-bent on attacking his rival Reed Richards and his team, the Fantastic Four, also brought Doom into conflict with other New York-based heroes. Spider-Man, who Doom attempted to recruit to his side, and the Avengers, who were forced to rescue Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch from Doom's clutches after the twins had illegally entered Latverian territory in search of a long-lost relative, to name a couple. Doom also crossed paths with Galactus and the Silver Surfer. The Silver Surfer's powers were Doom's for a little while before he lost them. If there is one perennial villain in the Marvel Universe, one iconic, timeless antagonist that represents all that is evil in the Marvel Universe, it has to be Doom. He has been allied with almost every villain at one point or another, and surprisingly, nearly every group of heroes as well. He's been an Avenger, a member of the Fantastic Four, and an ally of the Watcher. He was even Iron Man for a while. Now, there is hardly an easy way to fit 50 years of Doctor Doom's exploits into the MCU, but let's look at the most obvious ways it could happen. Number 1, a Fantastic Four standalone movie. We know that's coming, and we know that this has already been done twice on the big screen, but it remains the most logical way to introduce Doom. As his primary foes, the Fantastic Four will undoubtedly cross paths frequently with Doom once they're both in the MCU. Number 2, a Disney Plus series. I think a great way to introduce Doom to the MCU would be an 8 to 10 episode series on Disney Plus. We've already seen how great these shows can be with WandaVision and The Falcon and the Winter Soldier. I would do this in this way. 1 episode to cover his childhood and the death of his parents, 3 to 4 episodes to cover his time in New York and his introduction to the Fantastic Four, 3 to 4 episodes to cover his exile, return to Latveria, and rise to power and glory. Now, this would of course mean the Fantastic Four would need to be in this series as well, which may not work well with Marvel's plans for their first family. Number 3, Black Panther 2. Since we know Chadwick Boseman will no longer be portraying T'Challa in the MCU due to his tragic passing, the action of Black Panther 2 will likely focus on the transfer of power in Wakanda and the death of T'Challa. Could Wakanda come under attack by a foreign body now that they have revealed their technological superiority to the world? Who could use a lot of vibranium? I bet Doom could. Rumors have swirled that Black Panther 2 will introduce Namor the Submariner. Now, Doom and Namor have had a bit of a love-hate relationship over the decades, and this hopeful nerd wants to see them both appear in Black Panther 2. If I was in charge of booking the MCU, this is how I would bring Doom in. Namor 2. T'Challa would sacrifice himself to stop the onslaught of Latverian and Atlantean forces, leading Namor to see the error of his ways. Namor and Atlantis help Wakanda defeat Doom and Latveria. Shuri takes on the mantle of Black Panther. Life is good in Wakanda. New hero in Namor. New villain in Doom. 2 new locations in Atlantis and Latveria. And scores of possibilities. What do you think, nerds? How would you introduce Doctor Doom to the MCU? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe, and follow us on social media at WeThemNerds on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Be good to each other. Later, nerds.